women. What am I saying? I'm one of them.
Hey, welcome to Scooby-topia. Recently-ish on the channel, we've been looking at every episode of the new Scooby-Doo movies, my favorite of the classic era, and breaking down the legendary stars among them. We are slowly getting closer to the end, but today we have 4 memorable episodes to look at, which came in next when I held a poll for the order everyone wanted the remaining episodes to be in. And I'm fine with doing this one next, because it has one of my favorite jokes in the whole show. I'll let you figure it out. Next time, we'll be in for a combination of 4 iconic comedians on the show paired up, but we have some real legends today as well. I'm very worried about saying his name because there are 2 different words in it I could get in trouble on YouTube for saying, so we are going to pray. First up, we will be looking at Dick Van Dyke, a still currently living legend that everybody should be familiar with. Then we're getting into Jerry Reed and Davy Jones, a couple of proper music icons. And we'll be ending the video today with a sort of unusual episode, similar to the Three Stooges from the prior video. Laurel and Hardy will be getting the last spotlight today, who stand out because they were in fact real people, a couple of comedy legends, but they also had passed away by the time of this episode, so we have voice actors impersonating them and meant to actually be them. We'll talk about it later. 2 of these episodes I grew up with being on the Best Of DVD set, and I very much did enjoy them. However, the 2 episodes featuring our musical guests unfortunately weren't able to be cleared at the time, and didn't hit home video where they were available again until the 2019 Blu-ray. That also means that both episodes unfortunately run 41 minutes instead of 43, missing a scene that had been cut during syndication in the 70s and was not restored as it was for the other episodes on the Best Of set. We'll still do our best to cover the rest of the episodes though. Let's get into our first icon of the day. With a video this long, we have no time to waste.
Women, go figure them out.
Dick Van Dyke, born in 1925, is one of the most legendary actors and comedians around, and he turns 100 years old this December, God willing. I feel like if there's one guest star that I do not have to explain from the show that isn't a fictional character like Batman, it has to be Dick. At the very least, you have to have likely known him from either Mary Poppins, Bye Bye Birdie, or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I grew up with many of these movies on VHS and watched them all the time. I knew who this man was better than most anything in this Scooby show by the time I saw this episode in question, and without even having to go into the rest of his career, because he has such a wonderful and long one with as long as he's been around. There's an extremely good chance that you've seen the Dick Van Dyke Show, one of the greatest TV series ever made. It's still influencing shows to this day, like recently WandaVision, and ever since getting the Blu-ray when it came out, I can't even tell you how many times I've watched the entire show all the way through over and over. This is one of the most wonderful, talented, and funny men to ever walk the earth, so pair him up with Scooby and I think you'll find me pretty happy. And it is indeed a really fun episode. I really don't think we need to talk about his history and who he is for any context. For history, he's still making it. One of those people where you just have to say his name and that's enough. Let's hop right into the episode.
The famous Dick Van Dyke joins us today.
Season 2, Episode 8 of the new Scooby-Doo movies, The Haunted Carnival, originally aired October 27th, 1973. This also was the series finale for the program, the franchise going into Where Are You reruns until Scooby later returned in what's now known as The Scooby-Doo Show in 1976, 3 years later. This is also the final time the great Nicole Jaffe voiced Velma until her 2-movie run in the early 2000s. And man, she had a great finale. Interestingly, in 1997, Diagnosis Murder, the show Dick Van Dyke was starring in at the time, was going to insert scenes of the episode into a dream sequence, but the budget ran into issues and Warner eventually pulled out, worried for how it would affect the live-action Scooby film they were developing, which would release in 2001. It's kind of interesting how old they make Dick look in the episode compared to how he looked in 1973. They make him seem like he's already decrepit by this point. It's almost unfavorable, and nearly ironic with how much longer he's lived since. The episode opens with the gang on the road, not particularly going anywhere, when they see a sign for a carnival, which Daphne says she loves.
Naturally, studies show that artificial stimuli provided by carnivals relieve tensions of everyday exigencies.
Huh?
No, because really? Nicole Jaffe did her big one with her farewell episode. It just gets better. They all agree to have a nice day enjoying the rides and no ghosts, except for Scooby, pointing out there aren't rides for dogs. They let him know he can still enjoy food, and oh, there is so much going on in this shot. Daphne's neck most especially. Scoob really warms up to the food though, kinda worried for him. Daphne is just, oh, she is getting beat up in this episode bad. Scooby gets so excited he runs out and starts pushing the van faster, and they arrive at the carnival, which weirdly seems empty. Just like Scooby's stomach, get a load of how raggedy he looks. The new Scooby-Doo movies were on a quick time frame, like a regular half-hour program, and sometimes you can really tell. The immediate next shot is no better. I love the 4 of them here. They arrive at the ticket booth, the shade drawn, and someone inside snoring. Don't ask me why Shaggy randomly makes this pose. Even this shot of the boys cracks me up. This finale is rough. They lift the shade and find the ticket seller asleep. Oh, goodness, Velma. And they take this as a sign that the carnival sucks and dip. The ticket seller wakes up and immediately locks in, speaking to the imaginary crowd trying to enter. Our very rough-looking teens finally recognize the ticket seller to be none other than Dick Van Dyke.
What's a big star like him doing in a ticket booth? Selling tickets.
He goes ahead and lets them have a ton of tickets for everything, Scoob confiscating the food tickets, and tells them to hand them to the man at the gate. He then plops on a new costume and pops up at the gate.
That ticket taker looks like Dick Van Dyke.
See the ticket taker who looks just like Dick Van Dyke.
He, of course, then switches costumes and skedaddles again, while the gang confirm the inside to be empty as well. Then seeing Dick Van Dyke once more and assuming his relatives must work here, they head in and find the show to be lacking as well. Dick struggling to put on his fake muscle outfit doesn't do much good when he trips and pops it, deflating himself and exposing the ruse, admitting the carnival is a flop. Daphne seems to be taking the news hard. Dick admits customers won't come and all his employees quit, so he's having to do the one-man show thing. Velma asks why, and he admits people say it's haunted, but his family says the show must go on. The boys are out, but Fred is in at the thought of a mystery when a ghostly hand appears off stage, gesturing them to follow. They cross the curtain and find the arm, not attached to anything, playing the baseball throwing game and taking all of the Cupid dolls for itself. The boys, meanwhile, are headed the opposite way, really mostly scaring themselves, until they find the hot dog stand at last. Obviously, there's no one to man the stand, and Scoop starts to faint with hunger, so he runs in to do it himself, Shaggy serving as cook. Someone has other plans, though, as the grill opens and drops the food inside, which Shaggy blames on poor Scooby. He turns it on Shaggy instead, and the two realize that if they didn't eat it, someone else did, like, say, a ghost.
What are you most? Hungry or scared?
Hungry.
Have to admire his dedication. They try again, hoping to have eyes on both sides at all times, but behind their back, down goes the entire grill. They run out of there, and Shaggy thinks they would be safer if they find the gang, until Scoob reminds him not if they find the ghost. They do see a funhouse to try though, and you can see all of the little notes on the animation cells piling up down in the corner. They screw around for a while here, starting with the mirrors, and Scooby does whatever the hell this is. As they make each other laugh though, another ghost appears in the reflection, so they run off and barricade the door, the strongman's ghost breaking off the handle to the only other entrance. While they're realizing, I love that Scooby suddenly switches poses for a single frame just enough to be jarring. They try picking up a dumbbell to prop against the door, but neither of them can handle it, so the strongman taps Scoob out and helps. Maybe a little too much, so they are out. The others accept they can't find the ghost, and Dick demonstrates some of how he's run this place alone, like learning juggling, so shocking the voices get all mixed up here.
Great! Terrific! Fantastic! How do you do it?
He takes them over to his magic stage to show off that as well, getting stuck. So basically a majority of the episode is just screwing around in a carnival to get that 43-minute runtime up. Really, this bit goes on for several minutes, which isn't complaining, it's just a lot of still enjoyable filler.
Now, if I could have a volunteer from the audience.
To help with the trick?
No, to help get me down, I'm stuck.
As he needs one of the girls to go inside the box, Nicole Jaffe's farewell as Velma continues to be iconic.
Oh, I'd love to probe the scientific intricacies of this feat of legerdemain.
She even promises to keep his secret on how he did the trick, including from him. Meanwhile, the boys hop on a ride to try and hide, which proceeds to start and leave them in the dark. A cold hand ultimately revealed to be another ghost. They get trapped again, Dick and the trio finally hearing them, and this part is supreme.
Does he have a ticket?
Just a minute, I'll ask him. He says no.
Hey, no one rides free except children. Is this ghost over 6 years old?
I'll ask him. He says he's over 600 years old.
Oh, that's different. That makes him a senior citizen. Does he have a senior citizen ticket?
No.
Tell the ghost he'll have to get off.
Any filler is excused for the humor of this episode. The ghost stops the ride and the boys fly into a box of balloons. Another spook blowing one more balloon as Dick hears the hissing sound. The balloon being set free and flying the box up into the air.
If you float over the city, advertise my carnival.
One of the ghosts starts reflecting the sun at the balloons to pop them, so Dick runs over with a catcher's mitt to try and catch the falling duo. The gang talk him out of it, and as the two continue to fall, it's kind of crazy that their friends just start talking as if they already fell to their death and are remembering them.
Oh, poor Shaggy and Scooby. All they wanted to do was enjoy a carnival.
Yeah, they just wanted to have a good time. Go on rides, eat ice cream.
Quit telling everyone I'm dead.
Sometimes I can still hear his voice.
Dick, then hearing ice cream, gets an idea.
How can he eat ice cream at a time like this?
Are you not the one who was basically just giving a eulogy and doing nothing to save them? Dick runs over with the ice cream cart for them to land in, and you know with the promise of food, they land just fine. Even as Scoob enjoys his Scooby Scoop though, someone watches. They decide to split up, the boys going with Dick, and as they discuss, Dick says he feels it's not even really a ghost, just someone trying to scare them. I'm inclined to agree, given our batting average. He takes them over to prove his strength, does the opposite, and the strongman's ghost pops over to show him. They all hide and discuss changing Dick's name as part of the process, and I'm all for it. I'm deeply worried about what will happen for saying it in this video as it is, but he decides he has to stand up to the spirit anyway, saying he doesn't know the meaning of the word coward.
Sit down, I'll tell you.
Okay.
The trio elsewhere are back on their bullshit being extra, because why are they on a bicycle built for three? Daphne sees a photo booth and decides she has to stop for one, justifying that Dick might want to remember this day. Exactly, Queen, know your worth.
Women. What am I saying? I'm one of them.
Fred comes over, fed up with how long Daphne is taking, and opens the curtains to reveal her to be gone, a spirit head instead. To his credit, Fred tries to jump the spook while Velma cheers him on.
Got some neat pictures of me trying.
Dick decides to ask the fortune-telling machine for advice, which says they're taking a boat trip, then dumping them through a trapdoor where they land in a boat. Fred and Velma hear a noise and investigate, where they find Daph just down here having a gay old time in the bumper cars, where she fell from a trapdoor.
Whee! These things are out of sight! Look! No hands!
Not quite so fun when a specter starts trying to bump her though, just barely surviving the crash as the culprit floats away. Love how they try to follow it and the girls just bounce the hell off Fred. The other trio find themselves lost in the tunnel of love, and I did not expect all the scary things in here. But what works works. Dick stands up and finds a trapdoor in the ceiling, right where the others are, thinking it's a ghost, so they yank him up, him fainting and waking up still in the greatest carnival on Earth.
You want to buy it?
You asked us that before.
Yeah, I know, but it's a lot cheaper now.
Dick realizes they didn't tell him about a secret tunnel when he bought the place, and clearly left out a lot in general. They hear some noises and decide to investigate who's making them.
Or what?
Did you have to say that?
I'm sorry.
It seems to be coming from a motor room that controls the carousel directly under it, and looking in, they find the costumes of the supposed spirits, proving to just be luminous outfits, wires, and strings. They hear more sounds and see the strongman who said he left, Velma clocking that he must be the ghost, as only his arm could fit in the ghost arm. The strongman overhears and immediately confesses he did this to make Dick think the place was haunted, which, obviously, but he wanted to buy it cheap and become the owner instead of just the strongman. The boys make a run for it, he kicks them onto the carousel, but then seals his own doom by trying to stop it and catch them, which results in them slamming into him and his getting stuck in the ice cream cart. No unmasking this time, just that simple. So simple they forgot to color in Scooby's nose here, and not just for a frame or two, the entire length of this long shot. Dick makes the gang part owners as thanks for helping, putting them all to work.
I'm in charge of the Tunnel of Love.
Maybe somebody will take me for a ride on it.
Oh, Velma, you'll get there in a few decades. Scooby takes the role of the barker as a natural one himself, and so it ends. And that's the Haunted Carnival, finale to this particular series. This is a very mixed kind of episode that still somehow works. It feels so empty and barren, but it's also sort of on purpose, because the carnival is meant to be empty and off-putting, making the smallest cast of any of these episodes actually plot relevant. With so little to do and see in the setting, it makes the filler that's really present in most of these episodes stand out so much more, because you just have your handful of characters in an empty location having to entertain themselves until something happens. But like I said, it still works, because the humor especially is so good, maybe one of the funniest of the show. Nicole Jaffe may have retired from Velma after this beyond her reprisal in the 2000s for a couple of wonderful movies, but if one of the original actors had to go, this was definitely an iconic way to go out. Everything that she had built with this character and made so memorable is present here. The smarts, the emotions, her ability to be playfully mean with her friends and have personality, she brought it all for this goodbye, whether they knew it was going to be that for her or not. Everything we have established for the character all these decades later came from what she built in her performance, and this is some of her most absolutely funny work that she gave us, and I will watch the episode every single time just for her, even if I wouldn't personally say this is one of my favorite episodes. It's always been one of the less interesting ones to me even growing up, much as I love our guest star, but the whole gang are just so funny in this. All of them watching the boys falling and just sort of accepting their death, the bumper cars, the simple comedic talent that our guest brings to the table. If you want a funny episode of the show, this is the one. I think what's most lacking here is probably the mystery and villain, because we ultimately just have the one strongman playing the different ghosts and using tricks, and we don't even have an unmasking, so the ghost and reveal are a little less interesting as well, which might be another reason why this just isn't one of my top episodes. This is one that is entirely coasting off of the humorous writing, rather than successfully having any kind of spooky atmosphere, which this one really doesn't compared to the the best of Where Are You before it. Realistically, I'd have to put this closer to the bottom of ranking new Scooby-Doo Movies episodes, but that I still love and enjoy even a lesser episode is why it remains my favorite classic series to leisurely watch. Not the best series, but my most loved casual time to spend with a gang. Let's check out an interesting episode with our next guest and keep moving. Jerry Reed was an American country singer born in 1937, 35 at the time of this episode, and passed away in 2008 at the age of 71. He was even inducted posthumously into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2017. In the 1950s, around 2 decades before our episode today, he was promoted as a new teen sensation and was topping charts and winning awards by the time of this crossover, including a second Grammy that very year. Interestingly, the Scooby episode was also his first counted TV or film appearance in general, before he would later go on to appear as himself or play characters in future titles. Maybe you've seen him in the 1977 film Smokey and the Bandit, or its sequels, where he was one of the leads. Country artists still cite him as an influence even now, so even if he might seem like a strange choice to be here, he's definitely no obscure star. This episode heavily features the song Pretty Mary Sunlight throughout it, and if it sounds familiar, it's because it was the chase scene song from the Where Are You series finale on Halloween in 1970 in Don't Fool with the Phantom. Jerry Reed's cover of the song for the episode, recorded somewhat around a year later, would be the most lasting version ultimately, being included on the Kid Rhino Scooby soundtrack CD in 1998, Scooby-Doo Snack Tracks, the ultimate collection.
Pretty Mary Sunlight, she's alright with me. Pretty Mary Sunlight, she's everything I need.
As mentioned earlier, this was ultimately an episode I didn't really get to organically grow up with, as Warner was unable to clear the rights on Reed's side to release the episode on DVD, making it one of the excluded episodes until the 2019 Blu-ray, so I'm still having to become more familiar with this one as an adult. That also means it sadly is missing a full scene of the episode that was cut in syndication in the 70s, and did not get restored like the other episodes did for the Best Of DVD, not really seen since the original airing. With all that, let's look at the episode.
Today, Scooby-Doo meets Jerry Reed.
Season 1, Episode 14 of the new Scooby-Doo Movies, The Phantom of the Country Music Hall, originally aired December 9th, 1972. The titular Country Music Hall is most likely an homage to the Grand Ole Opry and the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Both are in Nashville, Tennessee, where Jerry Reed had lived for the past decade, as that's typically where you'll want to be for the country music scene. The title is also likewise a reference to Gaston Leroux's 1910 novel The Phantom of the Opera, which has seen many in homage. Even Scooby loves to continue referencing it, like the film Stage Fright, which I previously covered. Also, I feel pretty terrible for Jerry. If they made Dick look extra old, Jerry got absolutely mangled in the art of him for the card here. There's something uncanny about how the real actors can be depicted here. Dick especially was stiff looking with how they tried to keep him looking on model, but this is just wow. The episode opens up on the busy streets of Nashville. The gang on their way to see Jerry at his opening. They arrive at the Andrew Jackson Hotel where he's staying. The man at the desk says Jerry isn't in, but left a note for them, which tells them to head to the hall where he's rehearsing. Making their way over, the boys find it to be spookier looking than they expected. Fred and Daphne noting it's been closed for a year and that's why they need a big attraction like Jerry to reopen it. As Velma wonders why it's so dark if he's rehearsing, gosh, the same terrible caricature of poor Jerry is also on the poster. Fred also finds the doors to be locked, and Scooby finds a note for Jerry that says if he tries to rehearse tonight, he'll never see tomorrow, signed the Phantom. The boys do not want in where the Phantom might be, but the others don't want to leave Jerry in potential trouble. They shame Shaggy into coming, and then group shame poor Scooby as well. While the trio try the side door and find it locked, the boys come running into a tree, giving Velma the idea to use it and go through the window. They just need a volunteer, to which they all shake their heads at Shaggy, and this is certainly a visual. Velma gives the signal, and they fling the poor guy right into the window. What a sight. Absolutely insane. Poor guy even falls all the way from the top to the door down here.
Velma, your angle of approach was all right, but that tension quotient's got a lot to learn about windows.
Sorry about that, Shaggy.
Inside, they find the very over-decorated lobby, and start to head to the theater when a woman named Bertha calls out to ask what they're doing here. They explain Jerry invited them, but she says she's the only one here. They ask to check the theater and see if their friend's here, so she allows that, and they find it entirely dark and the stage empty. Bertha, meanwhile, suspiciously makes a phone call saying they have snoopers. Whoever's on the other end is saying he'll be right there. Gee, wonder if there are spooks of the evening. As Velma gets the lights on, someone watches them from the background painting, freaking the boys out and almost crushing the gang as they run from the whole thing being pushed. The others don't buy it being deliberate until Velma realizes it could be the Phantom, and suddenly they hear Jerry singing Pretty Mary Sunlight somewhere.
Pretty Mary Sunlight, she's everything I need.
They head out to look for him, and I assume who was on the other end of that call is at the door. Then Bing says Jerry isn't here, it's just a recording of himself being Jerry's arranger. He takes him outside and says Jerry must be at the pizza parlor, and otherwise to wait at the hotel. Shaggy notices the guy's weird license plate, which says Feebag, and Velma insists they have to get back in, because that was definitely not a recording. They pretend to drive away while these two watch, so yeah, an episode where there is no pretense, we just spend most of it knowing who did what for the next half hour. The gang do head to the pizza parlor to make it seem real, and they hear about a $2 million bank robbery on the radio, and Shaggy asks Velma how many pizzas that would buy. On the way back, Velma notes she unlatched the lock on the stage door for them, but as they pull up and Ben watches, the door has been locked back. Obviously, they put poor Shaggy back on the catapult, but as he flies through the air this time, Bertha slams the window on him. Ouch. Velma tries the door again, now miraculously opening, as it turns out he was turning the knob the wrong way. Shaggy falls on the way in, the rattling knocking the head off the dummy of an indigenous man. Velma supposes Jerry singing before was trying to signal to them, but the dummy head starts plopping down to give a good little fright. Jerry starts singing again, able to hear him from the vents throughout the building, confirming he's inside somewhere, so they split up. Shaggy and Scooby screw around a lot, it's pure filler so I won't take up time with it here. In the costume department they hear Jerry singing, now maybe on the other side of the door. While the trio try to figure out how to communicate with him, the boys open the door and find the room empty, the singing appearing to still be from another vent. Velma tries yelling into a vent, Jerry finally appearing to us and replying. He's not sure where he is, so they make sure he knows to keep singing so they can find him. While the boys screw around some more, the trio finally find the door he's behind and grab a ladder to smash through, and boy do they smash and crash. About at the halfway point now, something weird happens with the restoration work done for the Blu-ray visually. It slowly starts to get darker when it shouldn't, then the visuals become progressively more red and clearly were not color corrected properly, or maybe it was in too bad a shape to fix, until by the end everything is just red and blown out visually. Awful to look at compared to the first half. It's really strange, so if you notice the visual quality slowly becoming abysmal, yeah. While the boys get a spook, Jerry explains he was here on the stage when the lights went out, heard all kinds of scary sounds, and suddenly he's locked in a dark room, so clearly someone doesn't want him to perform. The boys run in to tell them about their phantom encounter, which sounds plausible now after hearing from Jerry. He doesn't want them to get hurt and tells them to head out though, which they refuse to do without him, the lights suddenly flickering. In the dark, someone steals his guitar, and Bertha turns the lights back on. Jerry dismisses her as he needs to rehearse at some point, and as they consider who could want to sabotage Jerry, Shaggy brings up Mr. Feebag. Jerry confirms he has no arranger, as they suspected. They split up yet again to find the guitar, Jerry leaving with Velma. Fred and Daff get a sudden jump scare when this Faust devil pops out of the stage, which honestly is actually scary, but then another trapdoor drops both of them. Shaggy then figures if Jerry needs an instrument, he can substitute with the xylophone he screwed around with before and they can go. Someone seems to have moved it though, and for some reason they run out. Shaggy trips down some stairs and finds it there. As Jerry and Velma look around, Bertha looks out with the guitar, so again, really no question about who did what. Under the stage, Fred tries some Morse code, which Jerry is able to understand, realizing the two below are asking for help. Unfortunately, he can only understand, so they knock and Fred yells for them to find a trapdoor lever. After another Faustian fright, the correct one is pulled and they rescue the duo. As Shaggy brings over the instrument, we are officially in red territory for the final quarter of the episode. As he tries to demonstrate playing it, two of the dummies seem to come to life. The lights go out and someone steals the xylophone, and Fred tackles the boys. Velma uses a spotlight, catching a light that Jerry recognizes to be unique to his guitar, only for it to vanish. Velma points out whoever is doing this knows every crack of this place, and will know they're coming no matter what. Scooby faking a migraine as the others decide they need some bait to lure the culprits to them instead.
You didn't run out of volunteers yet. Give Daphne a chance.
The boys head out and find a statue to be missing, old Davy Crockett following them off. Velma explains that the culprit should step in the loops, which Fred will pull and trap them with. The boys meanwhile find both missing instruments. The Viking finds them, trips and falls on the xylophone, rams into Davy Crockett, and here I think it's supposed to be the boys rolling out on the xylophone, followed by the dummies on dollies, but instead it's the dummies twice. Velma shines the spotlight on them as they get closer. The boys eventually headed for the stage and flying through the air, down a trap door, while the dummies fly perfectly into the trap as planned. And when you know it, the dummies are Ben, Bing, and Bertha. Bertha turning out to be a man in double disguise. Feebag being written on a note in the wig. Jerry realizes it might be notes like on the xylophone, the two criminals trying to get him to stop. As he plays the notes, however, a secret door under the stage opens up to reveal bags full of money stolen from the bank earlier. Jerry opening a week earlier than they expected saved the money, with the criminals having spent a year tunneling under the bank. Jerry sees them off, and the grand opening finally happens the next night with a sold-out show.
Pretty Mary sunlight, she turns each night to day. Pretty Mary sunlight, never go away.
We then end with Shaggy and Scooby referencing one of Jerry's songs, lyrics from his 1971 hit song, When You're Hot, You're Hot.
When you're hot, you're hot.
And that's The Phantom of the Country Music Hall. This is another episode I would probably put down closer to the bottom as far as episodes for me personally. It has some good humorous moments, but it's definitely lacking in the atmosphere. If you want interesting or memorable villains, despite the promise of a phantom, instead we get a couple of lackluster dummies that look like a Viking and Davy Crockett. Not exactly intimidating. And there's absolutely zero mystery to who it is. It's spelled out to us from the get-go as to who they are. It's hard to say what the point of a mystery story is if the mystery story isn't a mystery to the audience. So we have no atmosphere, no real mystery, and no actual memorable villain whatsoever. That sounds like a failure for a Scooby episode to me. Jerry Reed is a likable guy. His presence in the episode is welcome, although we spend forever getting to him because he's locked away, so we really don't even get that much time with him. You could consider that another knock against the episode. The gang have some good lines and enjoyable chemistry in the episode, but that's really the only thing holding this one together in my opinion. You're mostly getting a bunch of filler and uninteresting plot that leaves you without any mystique. As one of the episodes I had to mostly grow up without having in rotation like the main 15 I did, I have to say I really wasn't missing out on much. If there were any episode I would actually skip from the show, this might be the one I'd have to at least be in the mood to come back to later. The animation is lackluster as ever, so you're also really going to only have a good time visually if you're like me and love the terrible off-model frames. And it doesn't help that whatever print they're using on the Blu-ray is just completely destroyed in terms of lighting, and especially the color the longer the episode goes on. I have no idea what the missing scene is that they cut back in the 70s, but I get the feeling that it probably wasn't all that important compared to the Sandy Duncan deleted scene that would have actually been noteworthy, especially with how much filler there is in this one. This may be my favorite comfort series of the era, but this is down there on my list of favorites. I think you might find that to be the trend of this particular video. Let's see if the next one can pick us back up any. Next, we're looking at Davy Jones. No, not the one with the locker, though it's spelled the same. Yes, SpongeBob made the joke and had him cameo in 2009. Born in 1945, 27 at the time of this episode, the musician passed away in 2012 at the age of 66. His career took off as a teen idol in 1966, 6 years prior to this episode, when he starred in the NBC TV series The Monkees, a sitcom about a fictional band. After cancellation, the series spawned a theatrical film in 1968 titled Head. Eventually saw a reboot and but it was the music of the band that really stood the test of time. Maybe you remember that iconic ending credit scene from WandaVision, which featured their song Daydream Believer back in 2021.
What can it mean to a daydream believer
Yeah, that was the Monkees, and Davy Jones. And hey, 2 references to WandaVision in one video. Speaking of the Monkees, fellow former member Mickey Dolenz later voiced Alex Super in the 1976 Scooby-Doo show episode Mamba Wamba and the Voodoo Hoodoo, which I have a really good video on. Even with members leaving, Davy Jones stuck around with them all the way to 1970 until they disbanded finally, 2 years before this episode, and by this time now pursuing a solo career. In 1971, he appeared on The Brady Bunch, in the episode Getting Davy Jones, which would remain popular enough that he appeared again in the 1995 film. A writer on that film was later a writer on Witch's Ghost and co-created the Hex Girls, by the way. Sadly, Davy Jones didn't see massive success in life after the band, such is the fate of many teen idols, but he and the Monkees remain well remembered nonetheless. Let's check out his guest appearance.
Today, Scooby-Doo meets Davy Jones.
Season 1, Episode 13, The Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn Hall, originally aired December 2nd, 1972. Alas, this episode was in the same situation as Jerry Reed, not released on home video until the 2019 Blu-ray, so I once more did not grow up with it. As a result, it's also ultimately missing a scene cut for syndication and never restored. But before we even get into the episode, can we talk about the title card? First of all, they misspelled his name somehow. D-A-V-E-Y instead of D-A-V-Y? This is how it should look. Second, if Dick looked older than he was and Jerry was mangled, I have no idea what the hell they did to poor Davy. For being an honestly pretty attractive teen idol and only 27, they screwed him so bad here that I would sue. Especially with also misspelling his name on the same card. Not only is his face a terrible looking caricature, his head is massive and his body is tiny, the proportions being entirely off. It's just completely a nightmare. Davy, I am so sorry. The episode opens with the gang on the way to see a 14th century Scottish castle brought over brick by brick. So we are kind of reheating a gaggle of galloping ghosts nachos down to being supposedly haunted. They run out of gas and ask old farmer Cyrus Wheatley for help. Shaggy's suddenly deathly allergic to straw, despite never being allergic before or since. Mr. Wheatley begs them to avoid the Hagglethorn castle, as the haunted horseman supposedly rides there at midnight.
Kind of sends chills up and down your spine.
What spine?
Velma snaps at the old man farmer for believing in fairy tales, which is kinda funny for a maybe possibly 16-year-old to disrespect her elders so openly. His point is proven, however. The haunted horseman rides by, knocking a spooky jack-o'-lantern over. The haunted horseman is one of the icons of this show for me, as it's seen in the opening credits of every episode before everything else, and I always grew up wondering where it was from since this was a lost episode for home video. Funny that they removed Batman and Robin despite having the rights, but kept a clip from this episode on the DVDs. Mr. Wheatley gives them directions to at least make it to the castle anyway.
What could happen to you in an old castle?
You know, that's just what Henry VIII said to Anne Boleyn.
I'd say that was a deep cut, but that would feel disrespectful to Anne. Once they arrive at the ancient castle, they find the drawbridge up and no way to get past the moat, until Shaggy accidentally solves their problem and sends it crashing. Despite the inky water, Scooby gets a fright from a couple of eyes staring back, yelping his way over into the door. They do not believe his tale of a giant frog, and the door opens. And no shocker that this guy is voiced by John Stevenson. I took one look and had a feeling.
We came to tour the castle.
But if you're busy, we'll come back later.
Like 1987.
They take a look around and immediately want out, so I guess they should listen to the warnings, especially when they realize they're locked in and Old Creepy is gone. A man in armor waits at the top of the staircase, stumbling down with a bang, Velma deciding to be sympathetic.
Women, go figure them out.
Unmasked, they find guest star Davy Jones, his armor actually being tin cans he put together hoping to frighten off the haunted horseman.
Scooby, what an unusual looking animal.
Davy shows off a photo of his uncle Sedgwick, first Earl of Hagglethorn, who brought the castle over.
Wow, no wonder he's sitting down.
No, but it's not funny. At the end of the day, is it? It's serious.
He adds that the horseman might have come with it. Tourists have dried up ever since, and if it doesn't get better, his uncle will lose the castle to his cousin, the Duke of Strathmore, who wants to sell the bricks as souvenirs. As Shaggy names Butler Greach as his personal suspect, he awaits behind him, and the gang promise to solve this for Davy's uncle. Speaking of, as he writes a letter to his cousin about relinquishing the castle, a suit of armor listens in, until the gang interrupt to give the good news and convince him to let them have until tonight to solve this. The armor is not happy, dropping the boys through a trapdoor. Davy rushes out, hoping to save them from the moat monster, warning the oblivious boys that it's behind them. They have him tag along with some seaweed until they make it back safe. But with that, Shaggy is ready to walk. Dig everyone's voice but Davy's coming out of Davy's mouth.
What?
Cowardice.
They draw the drawbridge to keep the deserters in, however, and split up, giving us an unusual split with Fred joining the boys for once, and Davy off with the girls. That trio seemed to be watched by someone under sheets pretending to be a chair, which is a lot creepier than it should be. Velma is onto it and about to remove the sheet when the piano seemingly starts to play itself, Davy exposing a cat, and stirring up a ton of dust that makes them all start to sneeze, including whoever's under the sheet. No idea at all how he tosses the sheet onto them and vanishes without us seeing him. Now that's a feat, and he does have feet, leaving footprints. Meanwhile, the testosterone trio hear a faint noise, which turns out to be the haunted horseman coming for them. Despite boarding up the door, the haunted horseman is a ghost and finds the maiden anyway, the guys having to unlock the door quick. Reach appears and checks for them, finding no horseman in the other room, then disappearing himself just in time for the horseman to show up once more. They run into another room, keeping their eyes on both ends, and we get this iconic shot of the horseman descending from the fireplace. Scooby jumps to the chandelier in fear, and worse, falls on the horse's back, but Fred says the magic F word.
Food? You say food?
The horseman continues to chase, and the guys pick Scoob up on the way back, Fred deciding once losing the spook that they have to lure it out and prove it's fake. Davy and the girls follow the footprints, as eyes follow them, Velma being right about it being a trap. The lights go out and a door opens, footprints appearing from nowhere and the ghost appearing from thin air. Now that's another feat, he doesn't even look like the same horseman. Velma makes Davy tackle it, but he flies right through, then gets chased. Velma believes this proves its illegitimacy, however, pointing out a light from a projector that started since the lights were cut, and the ghost vanishing once it's turned off. Daphne then notices a strange book, pulls it, and triggers a secret passage. The guys are being chased again in another area, cornered and doomed until a hole in the wall opens and someone pulls them in, a light revealing Creech to be their savior. He thankfully knew about the tunnels, and Fred apologizes for thinking he was involved with the horseman, which Creech accepts graciously. Scooby gets a prick that comes from a horseshoe nail, which seems to confirm this is no ghost horseman at all, and Shaggy accidentally triggers another secret passage that the supposed ghost used to go through walls, hitting the trigger with his lance. Davy and the girls elsewhere discover a subterranean cavern under the castle, and tracks made by the moat monster wandering around, so they try to ditch it. Daff almost slips and falls until Davy rescues her, but something seems to be bubbling underwater, the monster blocking their way, so Velma tells Davy to sing to it.
But I've never sung for frogs before, just monkeys.
Get it? Monkeys. And so indeed we get a musical chase scene as the three hop away and he sings a song.
I know a place where I am going, and the place where I am going's just around the bend. And I can make you happy if you love me too.
If it sounds extra familiar, he's singing a cover of I Can Make You Happy, which was previously the chase scene song for the Scooby-Doo Where Are You episode Mystery Mask mix-up, so reheating nachos yet again. As the clock is literally ticking and time is running out, Scooby kicks a statue from hunger, revealing yet another hidden entrance. Listen, if this place was brought over brick by brick, would we have not uncovered 30 billion secret passages in the process? Speaking of, someone doesn't want them in there and triggers a trapdoor to dump them down, just as Davy and the girls find themselves trapped, the monster crossing over to them. The guys crash down in front of them and destroy the path, reuniting everyone and now safe from the frog. It's just mad enough to create another way to hop over, when suddenly they hear a loud noise that ends up being Scooby howling, causing a stalactite to fall and pierce the fake frog suit. A man in scuba gear revealed. They try to chase, but he knows the place too well and gets away. Shaggy gives Scoob a good scare enough that he tunnels under the gate, now able to hit the button and free the rest, but they can't follow his tracks with how many there are from the prior chase. Velma realizes they can differentiate them, as before he hopped with his feet together, but when exposed, ran like a normal guy.
Velma, you're a genius.
You're just saying that for one reason. Because it's true.
The footprints lead to a dead end, but do uncover a lost horseshoe, which Shaggy throws to make a wish, conveniently hitting the trigger for the trapdoor the frogman used. As they follow the tunnel, Velma notices Shaggy sneeze like he did around the straw on the farm earlier, lots of it falling from above. He accidentally hits a lever that leads the elevator they're in to rise up into a barn. They realize this is the barn they were around when they asked Mr. Wheatley for directions and he told them to stay away, while Scooby finds some luminous paint that turns him ghostly, just like the haunted horseman. Shaggy violently sneezes, revealing the frogman hiding in all the hay, but the haunted horseman is headed for them yet again. Embarrassingly, he gets caught on some rope and falls down, trapped. So they unmask him and reveal the Duke of Strathmore. Obviously, he wanted the castle to sell its parts, and Mr. Wheatley unmasks to say he'd have gotten half the profits, using the moat monster to scare off anyone who got this far. They show off their find to a grateful Uncle Sedgwick, and Creech offers to call the authorities. Sedgwick decides he shouldn't taint the family name, however, so Davy gets an idea for how they can pay off their misdeeds and raise money simultaneously. The castle reopens as a haunted attraction, Davy and the gang selling audiences on seeing the famed haunted horseman and moat monster for fun now, with our two culprits having to forever play the parts for the show. And with that, Davy says goodbye to his new friends, off onto another adventure. And that's the Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorn Hall. This episode has its own share of filler. There's a lot of wandering around the castle and getting chased around by the ghost or the moat monster. Even so, I think I like this episode a lot more. I wouldn't put the negatives on the guest in particular. I like Davy alright, but his dry British personality doesn't necessarily bring much flair to the episode, compared to some of the other guest stars on the show. I suppose he's a little too normal. He's a nice and regular looking guy, so he doesn't exactly stand out compared to a Phyllis Diller appearance. I suppose it's a potential negative that this episode clearly is reusing a lot of prior elements of other episodes. There are so many established tropes that this one pulls out over and over. I don't really mind that myself though. I like seeing tropes every now and then, and the Haunted Castle is always a classic location. Creech is a solid red herring, because not only does he have the look, he has the voice actor. John Stevenson is like half the villains in the franchise from the start all the way through the 70s. If you hear him, you know he's gotta be behind it. But this time he's just a creepy but yet competent butler. Compared to the lackluster villains of the prior two episodes, we finally have another memorable one here. Although I'm not entirely sure that would have been the case if the Horsemen weren't at the start of the credit sequence of every episode and was ingrained in people's memory. In context of the episode, he isn't necessarily a standout, nor is the giant frog, but I'd still say they are both big steps up from the last two, and the Horseman causing his own demise makes him kind of laughable. I don't think I'd put this one at the top of the show for me, but I'd still say it's one of the good episodes. I think I'd have a lot of nostalgia for it if I had properly grown up with it like the 15 best of episodes. It definitely continues to grow on me as a classic every time that I watch it, so really maybe one day it will be up there for me. Davy himself might be one of the main things going against it for me, just because he's one of the stars I know the least about outside of the show. I love Batman, I love Phyllis Diller and Tim Conway, so I have a natural attachment to certain episodes with a pre-built interest, but I have no prior attachment to Davy outside of this episode. And like I said, he's just so normal here that it's hard for him to stand out among the crowd in the company he's in. I think we have some interesting stars for the last episode of the day, however, and this is one I did grow up with, so let's take a look. Our last guest, as we referenced earlier, is sort of a similar oddity as the Three Stooges episodes. Laurel and Hardy were a comedic duo made up of Stan Laurel, who was born in 1890 and passed away 7 years before this episode at the age of 74, and Oliver Hardy, who was born in 1892 and passed away 15 years before this episode at 65. They both had successful and notable careers as themselves, but as one might gather, their legacy was truly the comedy that came from their combined character. The 1920s saw their silent films become hugely popular with their cartoonish nature of their violence, appearance, similar to the Three Stooges again, appearing in 107 films together over the span of 3 decades. They made their last real appearances during the 1950s, such as 1954's This Is Your Life appearance, their final work being a private home movie in 1956. Even after they were gone, however, they would continue to be easily recognizable and often imitated or parodied. Funnily enough, one of my first real introductions to them was from the season 5 episode of The Lucy Show, Lucy and Pat Collins, where Lucy and Mr. Mooney are hypnotized into believing they themselves are Laurel and Hardy.
Better hurry, Ollie.
Don't worry, Stanley.
I don't want to be late, Ollie.
Don't worry, Stanley. We've got plenty of time.
What time is it, Ollie?
Look. What a mess you've got me into, Stanley.
I'm sorry, Ollie.
With Lucille Ball being my other main hyperfixation as a kid and to this day, just as equal as Scooby, you can bet that if both of them featured references to something, it would stick with me. They aren't as well known today as they were in the 60s or 70s when Lucy or Scooby would reference them, but their lasting influence and importance cannot be understated. If you haven't seen any or much of their work, maybe check out one of their iconic films sometime. Obviously, like the Stooges before, the duo do not voice themselves, as they had both passed, being revived posthumously for this fictional appearance of their characters. Occasional Hanna-Barbera voice actor Jim McGeorge would voice Hardy, having played and voiced him in a lot of things, making him a natural choice to take the part here. Larry Harmon would voice Laurel, who had also played him many times likewise, and if he sounds familiar, it might be because he was known himself for his character Bozo the Clown, who I also grew up with. Both McGeorge and Harmon had voiced the roles in Hanna-Barbera's own 1966 animated series Laurel and Hardy 6 years prior to the Scooby episode, which you could say also makes this a Hanna-Barbera crossover like Josie or the others we've covered, though I felt it would be better to let the two stand on their own, being real people as well, rather than just a cartoon or TV crossover. Either way, that should tell you why it made sense at the time for them to be a guest spot on the show, even if 5 decades later it's less relevant to the current culture. Let's take a look at how this holds up now.
Today, Scooby-Doo meets Laurel and Hardy.
Season 1, Episode 10, The Ghost of Bigfoot, originally aired November 11th, 1972. Interestingly, outside of the Best Of DVDs and 2019 Blu-ray, this is another one of the few that's made it to one of the many compilation DVDs, being included on 2012's 13 Spooky Tales, Holiday Chills and Thrills DVD, which I have right here. This episode is kind of reheating nachos too, a certain snow ghost in particular, but I feel like we'll be talking about him sooner rather than later, so let's focus on this Bigfoot. As one might expect of an episode on a holiday DVD, the gang are driving through a snowy landscape, their classic winter clothing on this time, and Scooby's already singing jingle bells and ready for presents. They're headed to a hotel in Vermont for some skiing, and it seems that Laurel and Hardy are on the same page, headed there as well for jobs, getting into some classic antics of theirs already. Fred suspects an oncoming snowstorm now that they're an hour out from the hotel, and Laurel is freezing cold, not wearing the winter clothing Hardy told him to in case of an accident. Speaking of, some large hands prepare a giant snowball, which comes barreling down at them, just missing them while Laurel still causes an accident anyway.
This is another fine mess you've gotten us into.
It wasn't my fault. It was the rock.
As they wonder where the snowball came from, we get our answer with this creepy guy up the hill. As they get near the hotel, they find Laurel and Hardy trying to hitchhike.
Have an accident?
No, thank you. We just had one.
Up close, they recognize them, and realizing they're headed the same way, offer them a ride in the now very crowded van. As we said, they are headed to the hotel for business, but when they get there, it seems deserted. Inside, they meet owner Kaylee Burgess, and he explains the lack of people being due to the ghost of Bigfoot, who's peeping in from the window. According to legend, this terribly mean mountain man froze to death in a snowstorm a century ago, and now he haunts the area as Bigfoot, which, sure, I guess. The laugh track on this episode, by the way, is kind of extra obnoxious. I can't even tell you some of the things being said sometimes. Mr. Burgess says the people who've stayed have been scared and checked out in the middle of the night. At least, the ones who didn't disappear entirely. It does sound like an appealing place to ski though, with the place to themselves. Only one other guest, who happens to be the elderly Jonathan Crabtree. The gang take their room keys, and Laurel and Hardy express interest in jobs, which they get by default since nobody wants to work here with the ghost. The two attempt their first job by carrying in the gang's luggage, Laurel making it impossible to see and attempting to guide a blind Hardy. This does end with Laurel distracted and Hardy crashing in the elevator. A blizzard has taken hold of the outside leader, so the boys decide to get a snack and distract themselves until they hear a moan, and right out the window, there he is. He seems to be inside as well, swiping one of Laurel's suitcases, and when he opens the medicine cabinet, somehow the ghost is in there as well.
What would a ghost be doing in our medicine cabinet?
Maybe he's looking for an aspirin.
Hardy sees nothing upon inspection, the snowman only appearing once he turns, leaving Laurel to believe he's seeing things. The girls get a fright when the shutters seem to slam, and looking out the window, Velma too is face to face with the large-footed man. They scream for help, and all the men come to see, indeed spotting the creature walking away in the snow. Laurel has trouble sleeping after, but Hardy promises he'll protect him, so his friend trusts it and heads to the bathroom, while the snow ghost pops out to take his spot. Hardy tells the others about the latest sighting, and Scooby's tracker takes him right up to the Bigfoot, who runs into Laurel and Hardy's room, scaring Laurel out, then into the girls' room, and just generally revolving doors until he heads out a window. The next day, Scoob and the girls can barely stay awake, and their day gets even worse with the van buried in the fresh snow. Fred goes to ask for shovels, but with nothing else to have them do, Mr. Burgess tells Laurel and Hardy to take them. The two find Mr. Crabtree's chauffeur polishing his car, but he only growls at them like an animal, and as Laurel begs to drive, that beautiful car gets smashed up. They all arrive at the ski lift, and we get further hijinks as Laurel asks what his seatbelt is, unbuckles it, and promptly falls out, holding on to Hardy. Out in the snow, Scooby stops in fright as he finds giant footprints, which turn out to belong to ski instructor Hans Edelweiss. Shaggy does in fact need instruction, so Fred and the girls head on while he attempts to learn. Laurel finds a sled while Hardy warns them to be careful, and of course, Scooby falls over and bumps them, sending them flying, and as Scoob tries to get help from Shaggy, pushes him as well and hops on, so as they crisscross, everyone now is in chaos. Hardy has a cold landing while the boys face plant, and everyone heads back for the night to warm up, and despite the boys wanting to leave, they're snowed in for the night anyway. Mr. Burgess sends Laurel and Hardy up to deliver Mr. Crabtree's meal, but they get no response, so Laurel tears Hardy's pants to get the skeleton key. Checking out the room, they find it entirely empty, reporting back to the gang who figure Bigfoot has spirited away another victim, but they also figured that with them being snowed in, Mr. Crabtree has to be held somewhere inside still. Fred has them split up, Laurel fittingly staying with the boys, and Hardy joining the trio. Fred's side immediately hears sounds, realize the wall is hollow, and open a secret passage full of Bigfoot footprints. Laurel meanwhile accidentally finds a secret passage as well, the trio finding footprints themselves that run into a wall. Scoob accidentally opens another passage, checks inside, and reports ghosts, but Laurel reveals them just to be bed sheets on furniture. While the others follow the footprints all around, they realize this is how Bigfoot was getting around every which way so easily. They hear Scooby sneeze and run. The trio hear footsteps and hide, and out comes Bigfoot, hiding under the sheets as well. The others enter the room and see the Bigfoot, jump it viciously, but only find Laurel, the ghost somehow gone. Laurel messes around on the piano, realizing two of the keys don't sound right, and smashing them makes the ghost jump right out. He escapes through another passage, but Scooby's sniffer leads him to a clue, a paper with perhaps license plate numbers written down, which could very well solve the mystery of Bigfoot and the vanishing guests. Everyone heads out in the van the following morning, freed by Laurel and Hardy's services, and Fred updates everyone that he called the police, and they confirm the license plate numbers belong to stolen cars, dozens from all over the country. Fred has an idea of where the car thieves might be, but Bigfoot pulls up in a big truck with his own plans. Wherever he's headed, he's in too much of a rush to deal with the gang, so Fred tails him, only for the giant truck to simply vanish. They drive around the junkyard it's led them to, getting out to check the license plates on some of the cars, only to find there are none, and they all seem to be junk. They do find a snowmobile still fresh and warm though, so they check inside the office and find a projector pointed out the window. Fred starts the film, and the ghost of Bigfoot is projected just as they saw him before, though Dav points out the one chasing them inside was real, and what of Mr. Crabtree? Hardy outside warns them of someone on the second floor, so they send Laurel up to check, finding Bigfoot waiting, and somehow just as fast, it seems he's already escaping over the other way. Hardy chases after the ghost in the snowmobile, crashing as the others catch up on their skis. They find an old sawmill to check, seeing footprints in the sawdust, and looking around further, Scooby sneezes himself right into the hiding spirit. As they chase after it, they find a stolen car factory, where all the stolen vehicles are being repainted so they can't be identified. Bigfoot activates a lever that picks up the guys and drops them in the paint, Fred pulling the one that rescues his now green friends who at least go directly into a good wash. Scoob bumps into a barrel, and just like that, Bigfoot falls to his demise. Hans Edelweiss shouts that the ghost is under arrest, dropping his accent, turning out to be an undercover cop here to investigate the stolen cars. As for poor Mr. Crabtree, Scooby was able to solve that from the sawdust, going over to pull off the big fake feet with stilts inside. Fred unmasking the ghost to reveal old Crabtree himself, trying to scare off everyone to run his stolen car business. Later, Fred informs Mr. Burgess they'd love to stay another week, but they find out they need reservations. With no more ghosts, they have steady business again, and steady jobs for Laurel and Hardy. Mr. Burgess and Scooby share a wink as he asks if they're friends with the heroic dog, pointing out it was Scooby who solved the mystery, so any hero and his friends are still welcome here in that case.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo!
and that's the ghost of Bigfoot. Now that we've taken a look at all 4 of these, this actually might be my favorite of the group, surprisingly. I feel like I watched this one a little less than the others growing up and wasn't all that interested in it personally, but watching it now, this is easily the most classic Scooby episode of the batch. Firstly, we've solved the issue of the last 3 episodes, where we have a villain that can actually be easily remembered as a classic Scooby villain, an actual monster in a mask proper that feels like it could have been from the original series. We even have a pretty surprising reveal, because we only know Mr. Crabtree as this small, decrepit old man in a wheelchair, so why would we ever suspect that he was the very large and agile monster? The ski lodge is also a very classic feeling location, and being trapped because of the snow adds some good tension. And even if they might not be the most relevant anymore, I think Laurel and Hardy surprisingly might be some of the better guest stars. Sometimes the guests, Davy for example, don't come off as particularly interesting or memorable, or give you much of a sense of who they were, at least every now and then in the show. But for these two, thanks especially to the fact that the actors behind the characters they invented are already so well established in the personality of cartoonish nature to begin with, they translate perfectly to a cartoon setting where they can be goofy. If you don't know who they are, the episode doesn't waste much time showing us everything we need to know about their dynamic and personalities, giving us some of their catchphrases, and we actually spend a decent amount of the episode with them on their own instead of the gang. For guests like Davy again, for example, you don't get any time alone with him, or even Dick and Jerry outside of whatever they're doing with the gang in the episode, so you don't have a lot of time to feel like they are their own presence quite as much. Sunny and Cher and the Globetrotters are other good examples where you actually get time alone with them to feel out their personalities without the gang having to always be present, and Laurel and Hardy get a good amount of time to screw around in classic style for them, whether it's in their bedroom or doing whatever job they are currently up to, and I think their style of humor as applied to the episode matches the world of Scooby fairly well without having to really adapt much of anything. If you're looking for an episode that feels like it has the true classic Scooby formula, from the guests matching their energy, to a villain that feels like he belongs on the roster of classics, and manages to have a good mix of atmosphere and comedy, I think I might end up ranking this one much higher than expected before revisiting it, as long as you don't try to question too much of the logic of Bigfoot. I think that's the nature of Bigfoot anyway, just enjoy the cryptid. I do believe that brings us to the end of the line though, so let's start wrapping up. We have reached the end of this part of our journey. This batch of guests might not be as flashy as someone like Batman, but we still have some of the great legends of TV, film, and music present for this selection worth remembering. My love for the Dick Van Dyke episode has been reaffirmed, while Laurel and Hardy have surprised me by ranking a lot higher than I remember feeling about it from any prior rewatches. Jerry Reed and Davy Jones as 2 of the lost guests remain worth seeing, even if their surrounding episodes are not the most memorable in every way. And most certainly, this particular series remains one of my favorite comfort watches beyond any of the other classic Scooby shows. Ideal to put on during a rainy day of doing nothing. I'm even finishing writing this as rain pours down and makes it feel extra cozy. Though I have plans for a sort of extra bonus after, we have only one trip left into the new Scooby-Doo movies before we've finally covered every last episode here. From the best, the worst, and the very lost. I can't believe we've come this far. It's been a minute since we last talked about them, but this miniseries takes a long time to make, 2 weeks minimum for one video covering 4 of these, and that's a long time to not be uploading without always paying off. But I think you'll really like our upcoming last entry. For the big finale, we'll be looking at some of my other favorites, with 2 more best of episodes and 2 lost ones finally given back to us in 2019 that are truly fantastic. That's right, our 4 remaining guests to look forward to now are the legendary Phyllis Diller, Tim Conway to join our Don Knotts video, Don Adams of Inspector Gadget and Get Smart fame, and the nostalgic and hilarious voice of Jonathan Winters. You won't want to miss some of these greatest hits when we return one more time for the big finale. Until then, if you want to support the channel, the Patreon is now live. It's mostly just for that, but on occasion you might get a little bonus, and for sure some additional updates and so on. Until we meet again, bye!
Women.
Women.